What happens when petty power meets real power? A 17-year-old girl, flying alone to the most important audition of her life, is publicly humiliated by a flight attendant. The crime? Being black and asking for an empty seat. The flight attendant, smug in her authority, tells the girl, "People like you need to stay where you're assigned." But she just made the biggest mistake of her career. Because what she doesn't know is that the girl's father is billionaire Robert Sinclair. And he's about to teach her, and the entire airline, a lesson in hard karma they will never forget. The chaos of JFK's Terminal 4 was a familiar symphony to Maya Sinclair. At 17, she had traveled more than most people do in a lifetime, yet she'd never gotten used to the impersonal hustle. She clutched the handle of her violin case, a 1741 Guarneri del Jesus, a piece of history worth more than the plane she was about to board. To anyone else, she was just another teenager in a grey, unbranded, but ludicrously expensive, cashmere tracksuit, her box braids pulled back into a neat bun. She looked anonymous, and that's how she liked it. She was flying Aero Meridian Global, flight AM 112, direct to London Heathrow. This wasn't a vacation. This was the audition for the Royal Academy of Music, a moment she and her father had been planning for a decade. Boarding was called for Economy Plus. Maya shuffled in line, her passport and ticket in hand. She felt the usual knot in her stomach, not from flying, but from the audition. She needed to be rested. She needed to be calm. As she stepped onto the jet bridge and into the cabin, she was greeted by the lead flight attendant. The woman's name tag read Brenda Hoskins. She was a woman in her late 40s, with a severe blonde bob and a smile that was more of a baring of teeth. "Welcome," Brenda said, her eyes flicking over Maya's ticket, then over Maya's face, then down to her tracksuit. The smile didn't reach her eyes. It didn't even try. "Hi," Maya said softly, moving past. Her seat, 34B, was an aisle seat in the Economy Plus cabin. As she settled in, she immediately noticed a problem. The high-definition screen on the seat back in front of her was black. She tapped it. Nothing. She pressed the power button. Nothing. A 7-hour flight with no entertainment. Worse, she couldn't review the performance videos her coach had sent her. She looked ahead. The business class cabin was just through the bulkhead, separated by a thin curtain. As passengers filed past, she saw at least 2, maybe 3, empty pod seats. Just ask, she thought. Dad always says, the worst they can say is no. Maya unbuckled and walked the few steps to the galley, where Brenda was busy tapping on a manifest. "Excuse me, Mum," Maya said, her voice polite. Brenda looked up, her annoyance visible. "Can I help you?" "Hi, yes. My entertainment screen at 34B is completely broken. It won't turn on. I was wondering, I saw a couple of empty seats in business class, if it would be possible to move. I have an important audition when I land, and I really need to review my notes on the screen." Brenda's plastic smile returned, but her eyes were flinty. "Honey," she began, the word dripping with condescension. "Those seats are for our premium passengers. They're not just available for anyone." "Oh, I understand that," Maya said, flushing slightly. "It's just that my seat is defective, and the flight looks full. I thought—" Brenda leaned in, lowering her voice to a theatrical, cutting whisper. "The business class manifest is set. We don't just hand out $5,000 seats because an economy screen is on the fritz." She looked Maya up and down again, her gaze lingering on her braids. "People like you need to understand that. You should stay where you're assigned." The words hung in the air, sharp and toxic. "People like you." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. every passenger in the surrounding rows was now staring. A man in a suit, Mr. Henderson in 22C, looked up from his Wall Street Journal with a frown. A woman across the aisle from him, Susan in 22D, audibly tisked and shook her head, though it was unclear at whom. "People like me?" Maya repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "The passengers in the cabin you paid for," Brenda snapped, her patience gone. "Now please return to your seat. You're blocking the aisle." Humiliation burned Maya's cheeks. She was frozen. She wasn't just a girl. She was a black girl in a tracksuit, and this woman had reduced her to a stereotype. She wanted to say, "My father could buy this seat, this row, this entire plane. My violin case is worth more than your salary." But she didn't. Her father had taught her that people who brag about their wealth have no real class. Defeated, she turned and walked back to 34B. She sat down, her hands trembling. The cabin door was sealed. The plane began its pushback. Maya pulled out her phone and sent a single text to her father before the flight attendant instructed everyone to switch to airplane mode. "Dad, the worst flight ever." The flight attendant, Brenda Hoskins, was awful. She told me, "People like you need to stay in their seats. I'm so humiliated." She hit send, the message turning green to blue just as the signal cut out. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. It was going to be a very, very long 7 hours. While Maya was climbing to 35,000 feet, it was 7:30 p.m. in New York City. Robert Sinclair was not a man accustomed to waiting. He stood in his penthouse office on the 80th floor of a new Columbus Circle high-rise, a glass triangle that stabbed the Manhattan sky. The office was minimalist, a desk of black marble, a wall of glass overlooking Central Park, and a single priceless Basquiat. Robert was a shark. He'd built Sinclair Holdings from a $10,000 loan into a $50 billion private equity Goliath. He'd started with nothing, fighting prejudice at every turn as a black man in the cutthroat world of 1990s finance. He was ruthless, brilliant, and feared. But he had one vulnerability: Maya. She was all he had left of his late wife, Elena. He saw Elena's grace in Maya's every move, heard her brilliance in Maya's music. The thought of anyone hurting her, even slightly, sent a cold, precise rage through his veins. His phone buzzed on the marble desk. He glanced at the text. He read it once. He read it twice. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Brenda Hoskins," he said aloud. "People like you." He knew exactly what that phrase meant. He had heard variations of it his entire life. But to hear it directed at his 17-year-old daughter? Unacceptable. He didn't text back. He knew she couldn't respond. Instead, he pressed a button on his desk intercom. "Julian, my office. Now." Julian Vance was Robert's right hand, a man who moved through the digital and financial world like a ghost. He was in the office in 20 seconds, tablet in hand. "Sir." "Aero Meridian Global," Robert said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He turned to face the window. "I want to know everything. Their stock symbol, their market cap, their debt load, their board of directors, their majority shareholders, and the name of their CEO." Julian didn't blink. "By morning, sir." "By the time my car gets downstairs," Robert said. "I'm going to the office. The real one." Julian vanished. Robert grabbed his suit jacket. His phone buzzed again. It was a pre-scheduled notification. Maya, AM 112. Scheduled to land at LHR 07:15 GMT. 7 hours, Robert said to the empty room. "Let's see what we can do in 7 hours." By the time Robert stepped into his chauffeured Bentley, Julian was already in the passenger seat, his face illuminated by his tablet. "Aero Meridian Global, ticker AMGL," Julian said, rapid fire. "Market cap $2.2 billion, They're weak, sir. Very weak. They're over-leveraged from a bad fuel hedging strategy. Stock is down 40% year over year. They've had 2 union disputes in the last 18 months. Who owns them? Robert asked, his eyes on the passing lights of the city. Scattered, Julian said. A few big institutional holders. The largest single block, about 18%, is held by Westwood Capital. They're a legacy fund. The rest is owned by smaller funds and the public. CEO. David Markham, a lifer. Started in baggage, worked his way up. Not a shark, sir. A carp. Westwood Capital, Robert mused. That's Daniel Evans's fund, isn't it? I remember him. He's all about quarterly profits. He must be desperate to dump a bleeding-out airline stock. I'd assume so, sir. Good. Robert leaned back. Get Daniel Evans on the phone. I don't care that it's nearly 8 p.m. Tell him Robert Sinclair wants to make him a very rich man tonight. Julian's fingers flew. And, sir, what's the play? Are we taking a position? Robert Sinclair finally allowed himself a small, cold smile. A position? No, Julian. He looked at his loyal fixer. By the time Maya lands in London, I want controlling interest. We're buying the whole damn airline. Maya's humiliation was a living thing, a cold, heavy presence in the seat beside her. With the screen broken, the darkness of the cabin felt absolute. She tried to sleep, to escape into the oblivion of a transatlantic nap, but her mind replayed Brenda Hoskins's words on a loop. People like you. Stay where you're assigned. She pulled out her sheet music, a complex Paganini composition, and tried to study it with her tiny, battery-powered reading light. Mom. Maya jumped. Brenda was standing over her, her face a mask of false politeness. You'll have to turn that off. It's disturbing the passenger next to you. Maya glanced at the man in 34C. He was completely asleep, mouth open, a sleeping mask over his eyes. He's asleep, Maya whispered. It's policy, Mom. All non-cabin lights off until the morning service. This was a blatant lie, and they both knew it. But I need to study. And I need you to follow the rules, Brenda said, her voice like steel. She waited until Maya, with a shaking hand, clicked the light off. Brenda gave a curt nod and disappeared back to the galley. An hour later, the dinner service began. The cart clattered down the aisle, operated by Brenda and a younger flight attendant named Tom. When they reached Maya's row, Tom offered her the chicken. May I just have the pasta, please? Maya asked. Brenda, who was handling the drinks, leaned across. We're out of the pasta. Her tone implied this was somehow Maya's fault. Oh, okay, the chicken is fine then, Maya said, trying to be agreeable. As Brenda handed her the tray, she accidentally sloshed a cup of ice water. Cold water spilled over the tray onto Maya's lap, soaking the front of her cashmere joggers. Oh dear, Brenda said, her eyes wide with fake innocence. Clumsy me. Turbulence. The air in the cabin was perfectly still. Maya gasped at the cold shock. You spilled it on me. It's just water, honey. It'll dry. Brenda handed her a single, useless cocktail napkin and moved on, ignoring Maya's drenched state. Maya sat there, shivering and furious. The man in 22C, Mr. Henderson, saw the whole thing. He pressed his call button. Brenda ignored it for 5 full minutes. When she finally appeared, her annoyance was clear. Yes? That girl, Mr. Henderson said, his voice low but firm. The one you spilled water on. You were completely out of line. First at the door, and now this. It's blatant harassment. Brenda's entire demeanor changed. She went from predator to prey, her voice becoming defensive. Sir, I have no idea what you're talking about. It was an accident. And that passenger was being disruptive earlier, demanding a free upgrade she hadn't paid for. She was asking about a broken screen, Henderson countered, and you told her people like you shouldn't ask. I said no such thing, Brenda said, her voice rising, attracting more attention. I will not be slandered by you. I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, or I'll have the captain radio ahead and have you detained at Heathrow for interfering with a flight crew. It was an incredible threat, a nuclear option. Mr. Henderson, a journalist who recognized a losing battle when he saw one, stared at her. You are a disgrace to that uniform, he said quietly. He pressed his call button again to turn it off, then turned his back to her. Brenda, fuming, retreated to the rear galley. Maya, who had overheard the exchange, felt a fresh wave of despair. The one person who tried to help was now silenced. She had to get out of the wet clothes. She carefully retrieved her violin, placed it on her seat, and went to the back lavatory with her carry-on to change into leggings. As she stood near the galley waiting for the lavatory to be free, she overheard Brenda talking to Tom inside. I cannot believe that man, Brenda was ranting. And that girl. She waltzes on in her knockoff tracksuit, probably bought with government money, waving her audition story around like she's special. She demanded a business-class seat. The nerve, I put her right back in her box. Someone has to. Brenda, ease up, Tom's voice said, sounding tired. She's just a kid, and that guy in 22C heard you. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Trouble? Brenda scoffed. I've been with Aero Meridian for 22 years. I'm the senior crew on this flight. I am the trouble. They can write all the letters they want. They go in a file and nothing happens. That's the secret, Tom. Nothing ever happens. The lavatory door opened. Maya, her face a mask, slipped inside. She locked the door, leaned against it, and finally let the tears come. Brenda was right. She was a 17-year-old girl, and Brenda was the system. Nothing would ever happen. In the 50th floor conference room of Sinclair Holdings, the air was electric. It was 10 p.m. Robert Sinclair sat at the head of a long, dark wood table, a phone on speaker in the center. Julian was at a terminal, charts and data flashing on a wall-sized screen. Mr. Evans, Robert said, his voice smooth as silk. A pleasure. I'm sorry to call so late. Daniel Evans, CEO of Westwood Capital, sounded wary. Robert, this is a surprise. My assistant said it was urgent. What can I do for you? You're holding an 18% stake in Aero Meridian Global, Robert said, getting straight to the point. There was a pause. I am. It's been a problematic holding. The fuel hedges are killing us. My board is unhappy. I know, Robert said. I've seen your quarterly reports. It's a dog, Daniel, and it's dragging your whole fund down. You want out. We're always exploring strategic options, Evans began, using corporate speak. Robert cut him off. Let's skip the dance. The stock closed at 14 decimals 50. It's going to open lower on Monday when the new European fuel tariffs are announced. I know it. You know it. Robert, where is this going? I'm wiring you cash. Tonight. I'll take your entire position, all 18% of it. Evans was silent. This was unheard of. A block trade of this size, at night, without lawyers, was insane. You're making a tender offer? No, I'm making you an offer. I'll give you $18 a share, right now. That's a 24% premium on a stock that's about to fall off a cliff. You get to walk away clean. You book a win. Your board thinks you're a genius for finding a miracle buyer. Julian's fingers were typing furiously. The total cost was flashing on his screen, approximately $396 million. Evans was calculating. It was a golden parachute. Why, Robert? Why this stock? What do you know that I don't? I know, Robert said, his voice hardening almost imperceptibly. That their customer service is lacking. And I've decided to take a very, very personal interest in fixing it. This is a one-time offer, Daniel. You have 60 seconds before I hang up and call your next largest competitor and start a proxy war on Monday morning. I'll bleed your position dry in public. Your choice. It was brutal, brilliant extortion. Evans knew Robert wasn't bluffing. My God, Robert, Evans breathed. You're serious. 45 seconds. We need to paper this. Lawyers. My team will have the paperwork to your team in 10 minutes. The wire transfer will be initiated from our holding in Zurich in 15. We sign tonight. We file the SEC paperwork pre-market Monday. Do we have a deal, Daniel? There was a long, heavy sigh. Yes, we have a deal. Send the paper. Robert smiled. Pleasure doing business with you, Daniel. He clicked off the phone. Julian, Robert said. Sir, that gets us to 18%. It makes us the largest shareholder, but it's not controlling interest. I want control. Julian anticipated this. The next two largest holders are index funds. They won't sell, but the public float is 45%. We can initiate a tender offer on Monday for 33% of the public stock at $20 a share. It'll cost another $750 million. People will stampede to sell. We'll have 51% by Wednesday. No, Robert said. Not good enough. I want it by morning. Julian looked stunned. Sir, that's impossible. The markets are closed. I'm not talking about the New York Stock Exchange. I'm talking about the after-hours market, the dark pools. I want you to set up buy orders, huge ones, at $22 a share. Anyone who has a sell order, trigger anywhere near that price. I want it bought, immediately. Use the holding companies in Dublin and the Caymans. Spread it out. I want to trigger a panic buy. I want to own 30% by the time London wakes up. This was colossally risky. It would cost a fortune. Sir, that will cost a premium. I don't care about the premium, Julian. Robert slammed his hand on the table, the first crack in his calm facade. I care about the message. Do it. As Julian began to execute the most aggressive stock raid of his career, Robert's phone rang. It was his London ground team. Mr. Sinclair, we have eyes on the crew. They've landed at Heathrow Terminal 3. They're clearing customs now. The crew bus is waiting. Good, Robert said. I want to know which hotel they're at. The second they check in, I want the name of the senior crew member, Brenda Hoskins, flagged. I want her hotel room phone to ring at 6 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Tell her she is to report to the Aero Meridian London corporate office in Hounslow by 9 a.m. for an immediate performance review with the CEO. Understood, sir. And who should I say is calling? Tell her, Robert said. It's on behalf of the new owners. Brenda Hoskins stumbled out of the crew bus at the Heathrow Plaza Hotel, a standard beige airport hotel. Her feet ached. Her back ached. All she could think about was a hot shower and a full 18 hours of sleep before the return flight. She'd already forgotten about the girl in 34B. She was just another inconvenience in a long, thankless career. She checked in, dragged her bags to room 412, and fell onto the bed. Beep, beep, beep. Brenda swatting at the bedside alarm clock. It wasn't the alarm, it was the phone. She groggily looked at the clock. 6:02 a.m. She had been asleep for 3 hours. She snatched the receiver. What? Miss Brenda Hoskins. The voice was crisp, British, and utterly impersonal. Yes, who is this? This is the office of the UK station manager for Aero Meridian Global. You are to report to our corporate headquarters in Hounslow at 9 a.m. sharp for an emergency performance review with the executive team. Brenda sat bolt upright. What? No, I'm on my mandatory layover rest period. I'm not due for a review. There's a mistake. This is not a request, Ms. Hoskins. A car will be waiting for you at 8:30 a.m. You will be joined by Mr. David Markham, our CEO, via video link. Failure to attend will be considered immediate grounds for termination. The line clicked dead. Brenda's blood ran cold. A review? With the CEO? This was not normal. This was an execution. Her mind raced. It was that man, the one in 22C. He wrote a letter. He must have. That arrogant, self-righteous. She threw the covers off, her heart pounding with adrenaline and rage. She had survived 22 years of complaints. She would survive this one. Meanwhile, in a luxury suite at the Savoy in central London, Maya Sinclair was finally waking up. Her father had arranged for a car to pick her up, and she'd slept soundly, the horrors of the flight fading slightly. Her audition was tomorrow. Her phone rang. It was her dad. "Hey, Dad." "Maya, baby." Robert's voice was warm, but she could hear the steel underneath it. "How are you? Are you at the hotel?" "I am. It's beautiful." "Thank you, Dad." "Maya, I need you to tell me what happened on that flight. I got your text, but I need to know everything. Every word." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, and for 10 minutes she recounted the entire, humiliating ordeal. The honey, the people like you, the broken screen, the feigned ignorance, the spilled water, the reading light, and finally, the conversation she overheard in the galley. And she said she put me back in my box. Dad. She said nothing ever happens. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Maya could picture her father's face, the way his jaw set when he was truly, profoundly angry. "Dad?" "Thank you, Maya," he said, his voice quiet. "That's all I needed. You focus on your audition. Forget this. Forget her. You go and you play your heart out. I'll handle the housekeeping." "What are you going to do, Dad? Write a letter?" "Something like that," Robert said. "I love you. I'll see you tomorrow." He hung up. He was still in his New York office. It was just after 3 a.m. Julian was asleep on a couch. The market raid was complete. Robert looked at the final tally on the screen. Sinclair Holdings, 46.2% of AMGL. It wasn't 51%, but it was more than enough. They were, without question, the new power. He looked at his other screen, a video feed waiting to go live. In 1 hour, David Markham, the CEO, would be logging on for the most important meeting of his life. Robert loosened his tie. "All right, David," he said to the blank screen. "Let's talk about your company's rot." Brenda Hoskins walked into the Aero Meridian corporate office like a woman walking to her own execution. She had put on her full, crisp uniform, a layer of armor, her face a mask of professional makeup. She was led into a sterile, windowless conference room. Her direct supervisor, a nervous man named Philip, was there, as was the UK station manager. At the head of the table, a 70-inch screen was dark. "Brenda, thank you for coming in," Philip said, avoiding her eyes. We have a serious matter to discuss." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Philip," Brenda said, taking her seat, arranging her skirt. A passenger in 22C was being very disruptive. The screen flickered to life. 2 video feeds appeared. On the left was David Markham, the CEO, looking pale and sleepless in his home office in Chicago. On the right was a man Brenda had never seen, sharp, dressed in an immaculate suit, exuding an aura of absolute, terrifying power. This was Robert Sinclair. "Miss Hoskins," David Markham began, his voice strained, "we are here with Mr. Robert Sinclair. As of this morning, Mr. Sinclair is our new primary stakeholder and will be overseeing all executive operations." Brenda felt the floor drop out from under her. Stakeholder. Mr. Sinclair, Markham continued, has requested this review. Robert Sinclair leaned forward. His eyes locked on Brenda through the camera. Ms. Hoskins, I've been reviewing the performance reports for your division. Tell me, what is Aero Meridian's policy on discriminatory behavior? Brenda's mouth was dry. We have a zero-tolerance policy, sir. We value all our passengers. Do we? Robert's voice was dangerously quiet. Let's talk about flight AM 112, yesterday. Passenger 34B, a 17-year-old girl named Maya Sinclair. Brenda's blood turned to ice. Sinclair? Oh God, oh God. I remember the passenger, Brenda stammered, her facade cracking. She was demanding an upgrade. Was she? Robert countered. Or was her in-flight entertainment system broken? And was she politely inquiring about a solution? Well, it was broken, yes, but And what was your solution, Ms. Hoskins? Did you reset the system? Did you offer her a portable tablet? Did you offer her a voucher? I was very busy with boarding, sir. I told her I would look into it. No, Robert said. You didn't. You told her, and I quote, business class is for premium passengers. You called her honey. And then you told her, people like you need to stay where they are assigned. Brenda turned ashen. I never said that. That is a lie. She is lying. So she's lying? Robert asked. She's also lying about you spilling a full cup of ice water on her, and forgetting her meal, and telling her to turn off her reading light, claiming she was disturbing a passenger who was sound asleep. It was turbulence. The reading light was distracting. These are baseless accusations. Brenda was desperate, her voice rising. It's her word against mine. She was just an entitled teenager in a tracksuit. In a tracksuit, Robert repeated, nodding slowly. And that's how you judged her. That, and the color of her skin. I did not. I am not a racist, Brenda shrieked. This is her word against mine, she said again, grabbing at the only defense she had. You can't prove any of it. Robert Sinclair looked down at his desk for a moment. He seemed to be reading something. You're right, Miss Hoskins. It's a he said, she said situation, and that's just not good enough. That's why I prefer evidence. He looked up. David, please play the audio file sent to us this morning by passenger 22C, Mr. James Henderson. Who? Brenda whispered. Mr. Henderson, as it turns out, is the senior European correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, Robert said. And he was so appalled by your behavior that he not only wrote a 2-page memo detailing every microaggression, he also, well, he has a habit. He's a journalist. He records everything. Markham hit a key, and Brenda's world ended. Her own voice filled the conference room, tinny but clear, recorded on Henderson's phone. Audio. People like you need to understand that. You should stay where you're assigned. Audio. It's just water, honey. It'll dry. Audio, from the galley, muffled but audible. She waltzes on in her knockoff tracksuit. I put her right back in her box. Someone has to. The room was silent. Philip was staring at the table. The UK station manager was writing something on a legal pad. Brenda was no longer breathing. She was hyperventilating. So, Robert Sinclair said, his voice now devoid of all emotion. It seems passenger 34B was not in fact lying. It seems you are. You lied to your supervisors and you lied to me. But the part I'm most interested in is the part where you said, nothing ever happens. He leaned in, his face filling the screen. You see, Miss Hoskins, you are a symptom of a disease, a rot. The rot of prejudice and petty tyranny, The rot that says you can treat people as less than human because of how they look or what you assume they're worth. Mr. Sinclair, I didn't know. Brenda was openly weeping now, the tears carving black streaks through her makeup. I didn't know who she was. If I had known she was your daughter, I would have... You would have what? Robert roared, his voice exploding into the room, making everyone jump. You would have been a decent human being. Decency shouldn't depend on a bank account, Miss Hoskins. You did this to my daughter, and the only thing you regret is that you got caught. He looked at Markham. David. Markham snapped to attention. Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Ms. Hoskins is terminated, effective immediately, for cause. No severance, no pension payout. I want her escorted from the building. And I want her flight certification flagged for review with the FAA and the ASA for discriminatory conduct and passenger endangerment. I want her blacklisted. I want her to never, ever be in a position of authority over another human being again. Sir, Brenda begged, please, I have a mortgage. My career, 22 years. Your 22 years are over, Robert said. You should have thought of that before you tried to break the spirit of a 17-year-old girl. Get her out of my sight. Philip and the manager stood up. Brenda was sobbing, a broken, hysterical mess. No, please, you can't do this. As she was led out, a thought struck her. She looked back at the screen, at the CEO. Mr. Markham, you can't let him do this. This isn't policy. David Markham wouldn't meet her eyes. He's right, Brenda. It's over. She was gone. The room was empty. Markham let out a shaky breath. Mr. Sinclair, Robert, a terrible, terrible incident. I am profoundly sorry. I will be on the next flight to London to apologize to your daughter personally. We will, of course, be issuing a full... Don't bother, David, Robert said, cutting him off. Sir? You're fired, too. Markham's face went slack. What? Robert, you can't. I'm the CEO. You were the CEO. You presided over a company with a 40% stock collapse and a culture that allowed women like Brenda Hoskins to flourish for 22 years. You are the head of the rot. The board will be calling an emergency session in 1 hour to accept your resignation. If you fight it, I will release Mr. Henderson's audio and his full story to every newspaper on the planet. Your career will be over. This way you just get to retire. Your choice. Markham stared, speechless, as Robert Sinclair's feed went black. The feed went black. David Markham stared at the empty screen, the reflection of his own horrified face staring back at him. It took a full 10 seconds for the sound to return to the world, for him to hear his own heart hammering against his ribs. He can't be serious, Markham whispered, looking at the stunned faces of Philip and the UK station manager. But he was. Robert Sinclair was deathly serious. Meanwhile, in the New York penthouse, Robert Sinclair didn't even take a breath. He was already on to the next phase. Julian Vance, his chief counsel and fixer, was standing by, a notepad full of logistics for the corporate takeover. All right, Julian, Robert said, loosening his tie for the first time in 24 hours. Phase 1 is complete. The rot has been cut out. Understood, sir, Julian said. All business. I'm compiling a list of candidates for interim CEO. We'll need to send a team to Chicago to stabilize the C-suite and another to Hounslow. We need to get ahead of the union negotiations for the new quarter, and I strongly recommend a full rebranding campaign. New livery, new uniforms, to distance us from the... Sell it, Robert said. Julian stopped, his pen hovering over the pad. Sir? Sell it, Julian. All of it. Our entire 46.2% stake. Dump it. Julian blinked. He was a man who processed multi-billion-dollar transactions before breakfast. He was not, however, a man who understood this. Sir, sell it? We just bought it. The raid cost us. Mr. Sinclair, the premium we paid was astronomical. If we sell now, on this news, we will light close to $1 billion on fire. It's financial malpractice. It's not finance, Julian. It's pest control, Robert said, walking to the window. The first grey light of dawn was breaking over Manhattan. I never wanted an airline. I wanted a reckoning. I looked into the financials, Julian. The rot isn't just Brenda Hoskins. It's everywhere. It's in their HR files, their promotion structure, their settlements for lost baggage that were actually discrimination suits they buried. It's in Markham's golden parachute. But, sir, we could fix it, Julian argued, his voice passionate for the first time. We own it. We can tear it down to the studs and rebuild it. Make it a model of corporate responsibility. That's the Sinclair Holdings way. No, Robert said, his voice flat and final. You can't fix a foundation built on poison. You demolish the building. This company doesn't deserve to be saved. It deserves to be an example. An example of what? Our catastrophic losses. An example of consequence, Robert snapped. I want to send a message. Not just to airlines, but to every company that thinks a human resources complaint is just paperwork. I want them to see what happened to Aero Meridian and ask themselves, could a Robert Sinclair buy us? Julian was pale. This was scorched earth. This was biblical. How do we even do this? We can't just dump that much stock. It'll trigger every circuit breaker. The SEC will... The SEC, Robert interrupted, will be the least of their problems. Here's the plan. Phase 2. He turned from the window, his eyes blazing. First, you're going to call James Henderson at the Wall Street Journal. Sir, he's the man in 22C, the one who recorded the audio. He's already a witness. Now he gets the exclusive. I want you to give him everything. The audio of Brenda in the galley. The full audio of the termination hearing with Markham and Hoskins. The fact that Markham was fired. The fact that I am the new owner. And the fact that my daughter was the girl in 34B. I want the human story, Julian, not the business one. Julian was writing frantically. Sir, that's deliberately crashing the stock. Our own stock. That is blatant market manipulation. It is not, Robert corrected him, a predatory smile touching his lips. It is radical transparency. As the new primary stakeholder, I have discovered gross, systemic mismanagement, a culture of rampant discrimination and executive leadership that actively covered it up. I am fulfilling my duty by informing the public. The market will react as it should. It's not my fault their true value is 0. He let that sink in. Second, Robert continued, the moment that article goes live, I want an anonymous tip, complete with a copy of the WSJ article, sent to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Tell them to open a pattern and practice investigation into Aero Meridian's hiring, promotions and customer service. The article will be all the probable cause they need. My God, sir, Julian whispered. You're not just selling the company, you're executing it. The company executed itself, Julian. It just didn't know it yet. Get it done. In a London flat, James Henderson was nursing his third coffee, writing what he assumed was a futile, angry letter to Aero Meridian's customer service portal. He was a seasoned journalist who had covered wars and financial collapses. He knew a formal complaint was just screaming into the void. His phone rang. An unknown New York number. Henderson? Mr. James Henderson? This is Julian Vance, Chief Counsel for Sinclair Holdings. Never heard of you? Henderson said, ready to hang up. You will. My employer, Mr. Robert Sinclair, is the new majority owner of Aero Meridian Global. He's taken a personal interest in your complaint regarding Flight AM-112. Henderson sat up. Owner? I just landed 8 hours ago. How? Mr. Sinclair moves quickly, Julian said dryly. He wanted to thank you for your memo and your audio file. He found it persuasive. Persuasive how? Persuasive enough that he has, as of 1 hour ago, terminated CEO David Markham for cause. And of course, flight attendant Brenda Hoskins. Henderson was speechless. He was used to chasing stories, not having them delivered on a platinum platter. You fired the CEO? Because of a flight attendant? Because of a culture, Julian corrected. And Mr. Sinclair would like to offer you the exclusive. We will provide you with the full, on-the-record audio of the galley conversation, the complete audio of the termination hearing, and a statement from Mr. Sinclair himself. The only condition is that you also tell the story of the passenger in 34B. Her name is Maya Sinclair. She's his daughter. Henderson felt a jolt of electricity. This wasn't a story. This was the story. Mr. Vance, send me everything you have. I'll have this on the front page by midnight, London time. We're counting on it, Julian said, and hung up. The story dropped at 7 p.m. Eastern, just as Wall Street was waking up and London was settling in. The Wall Street Journal headline was an explosion. Airline of hate. Billionaire Robert Sinclair buys Arum Lobel in 7-hour raid to fire racist flight attendant who humiliated his daughter. It was, as James Henderson later wrote, the single most read story of his career. It wasn't a business piece. It was a saga of corporate hubris and biblical revenge. The article included the full, damning transcripts. Brenda Hoskins. She waltzes on in her knockoff tracksuit. I put her right back in her box. Robert Sinclair, you did this to my daughter, and the only thing you regret is that you got caught. Robert Sinclair, you're fired too. The story went supernova. It was picked up by every news outlet on Earth. Aero Meridian, Yandrasa Brenda Hoskins, and Robert Sinclair were the top 3 trending topics on the globe. Morning shows cancelled their celebrity interviews to discuss the audio. Social media was a torrent of outrage. Other Aero Meridian passengers and employees, now protected by the company's implosion, came forward. A black pilot, repeatedly passed over for captain, shared his story. A Hispanic flight attendant, fired for insubordination after reporting a senior crew member, shared hers. It was a digital dam break. Aero Meridian wasn't just a company with one racist employee. It was a toxic ecosystem. When the New York Stock Exchange opening bell rang on Monday morning, it was a formality. It was an execution. The ticker for AMGL flashed on the screen, $14.50. Then, $9.20. Then, trading halted. The sell orders were so massive, so absolute, that the market's circuit breakers triggered instantly. When it reopened 15 minutes later, it was a free fall. $7 taxons, $50, $30. On CNBC, a panel of financial analysts stared in disbelief. I've never seen anything like it, one said, rubbing his temples. Robert Sinclair just willingly lit. He checks his math. $800 million on fire. It's the most expensive HR complaint in human history, another shrieked. He didn't just fire the CEO, he vaporized the entire company. By noon, the final blow landed. A spokesperson for the Department of Justice, standing in front of a row of American flags, announced a full and sweeping pattern and practice investigation into Aero Meridian Global, based on credible and voluminous evidence of systemic discriminatory conduct. That was it. Their lenders called in their loans. Their fuel suppliers cut off their credit. By 4 p.m. on Monday, Less than 72 hours after Maya Sinclair asked for a seat upgrade, Aero Meridian Global filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The fallout was immediate. Passengers were stranded mid-journey. Airports were flooded with crying families holding useless tickets. And thousands of employees, the good pilots, the kind flight attendants like Tom, the gate agents, the mechanics, were suddenly jobless. The karma was hard, but it was also messy. It was a bomb that took out the guilty and the innocent all at once. And what of Brenda Hoskins? She had landed back in New Jersey, blissfully unaware, until her supervisor called her and told her not to come to the airport. Just watch the news, Brenda. She turned on the TV and saw her own face. She heard her own voice. Put her back in her box. She became, overnight, the most hated woman in America. Her address was leaked. Her social media was flooded with threats. She was fired, of course, but that was just the beginning. The mortgage she had pleaded about was real. With her pay frozen and her career gone, the bank foreclosed in 30 days. She was evicted. She tried to get another job. She had 22 years of experience. "We're so glad to have you, Brenda," the HR manager at a budget airline said, smiling. "Just need to do the standard background check." He typed her name into Google. His smile froze. He looked up, his face pale. "Oh, you're that Brenda Hoskins. I'm afraid the position has just been filled. Security will see you out." It was the same everywhere. The FAA and ESA, under intense public pressure, had put her flight certification under permanent review, citing conduct unbecoming and passenger endangerment. She was blacklisted, unhireable, toxic. 6 months later, on a cold, rainy November night, Brenda Hoskins was working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour convenience store off the New Jersey Turnpike. Her blonde bob was gone, replaced by stringy, mousy brown hair. She wore a stained blue vest and a name tag that read Brenda H. A man in a business suit, grabbing a coffee, peered at her. "Hey," he said, squinting. "I know you. You're that racist flight attendant, aren't you?" Brenda flinched, her body tensing. She looked down at the register, her face burning with a shame so deep it had burned out her tears. "That'll be 250, she muttered, not looking up. "Next in line." She had told Tom, "Nothing ever happens." She was wrong. She hadn't just been fired. She had been erased. Her hard karma wasn't a prison cell. It was a lifetime of minimum wage, of being recognized, of living in the very box she had tried to put Maya in. 2 days after the company's collapse, Robert Sinclair sat in a small, acoustically perfect auditorium at the Royal Academy of Music in London. He wasn't a shark. He wasn't a billionaire. He was just a dad, sitting in the back row, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Maya walked onto the stage. She looked small, alone under the single spotlight. She saw her father, and her eyes, for a second, were full of the weight of the last 48 hours. She had seen the news. She knew what he had done. She knew that thousands of people were out of work, all because of her. She closed her eyes. She took a breath. She thought of Brenda's sneer. "People like you." She had to prove she wasn't just the billion-dollar baby who had cost thousands their jobs. She was a musician. She had earned this. She raised the 1741 Guarneri to her chin, and she played. It was Paganini, a composition so technically demanding it was considered a musical demon. But Maya didn't just play the notes. She attacked them. She channeled the cold humiliation of 34B, the fury of the spilled water, the despair of the galley conversation, and the final, soaring, complex power of her father's retribution. The music was fire and pain and, in its final, triumphant notes. It was freedom. When she finished, the auditorium was utterly silent. The judges, 3 of the most revered musicians in the world, were staring. Finally, the head of the panel, an elderly woman, spoke. "Ms. Sinclair," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That was profound. Art is not about perfection. It is about truth. You have shown us a great deal of truth today. Welcome to the Royal Academy." Maya ran from the stage, her violin case in hand, and launched herself into her father's arms. "I did it, Dad!" she cried, tears of joy and release streaming down her face. "I got in. I got the full scholarship." "I never had a doubt," Robert said, holding her tight. "I have never been more proud of you." They walked out of the academy into the bright, cold London afternoon. Maya was quiet for a long time. "Dad," she finally said, stopping on the sidewalk. "The airline. It's gone. The news said 20,000 people are out of work. All because of me." Robert put his hands on her shoulders. "No, Maya, look at me. Not because of you, because of Brenda, because of David Markham, because of a board of directors that cared more about fuel hedges than human decency. A company is not a logo or a fleet of planes, baby. It's a set of values, and their values were rotten. I didn't destroy that company. I just held a mirror up to it, and it shattered. But the people, the other flight attendants, the pilots, the good ones, the Toms of the world, they'll be hired in a week by Delta, by British Airways, by airlines that are desperate for qualified staff. The market will fix that. I just helped it clear away the rot." Maya still looked troubled. "But the money, Dad. The news. They said you lost almost $1 billion. Just to fire one mean lady." Robert Sinclair smiled, a real, warm smile. He put his arm around his daughter, and they started walking again. "Maya, money is just paper. It's a tool. It's a way of keeping score in a game I've already won. I've lost that much on a bad currency hedge. I've spent that much on a stock buyback just to prop up a price. It's an illusion." He stopped and looked at her. "I used that tool to buy you something, to buy us something." "What?" "The knowledge that you were heard, the proof that your dignity is priceless. I wanted you, and every other person who looks like you, and every other person who's ever been told to stay in their box, to know that their voice matters. And I was willing to pay any price to hear Brenda Hoskins say, 'Nothing ever happens,' and for her to be so wrong." He tapped her violin case. "Now, enough about that. You played the Paganini from your heart. But I have a question." "What?" Maya asked, a small smile finally returning to her face. "Did you play it from 34B? "I did, Dad," she laughed. "I played it right from 34B. "That's my girl," he said. And they walked down the street, a father and a daughter, their conversation turning from the ashes of a fallen company to the bright, limitless future of her music. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's a multi-billion-dollar corporate takeover executed in 7 hours. Robert Sinclair taught the world that while prejudice and hate are free, he was willing to pay any price to stamp it out. Brenda Hoskins learned the hard way. The system only protects you until someone powerful enough decides to break it. The next time you see someone being mistreated, on a plane, in a store, or on the street, you might just be witnessing the before in a story of hard karma. What did you think of Robert's lesson? Was it justice, or was it too much? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with your friends. And please, subscribe to the channel for more true-life stories of karma and justice. We read all your comments, and your support means the world. We'll see you in the next video. The pilot's voice was like ice, slicing through the tense cabin air. Get security. Get her off my plane. He was pointing, his finger rigid, at the black woman in seat 2A. She was calm. She was professional. And she was, in his eyes, a threat. But the pilot, Captain Mark Jensen, had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He thought he was removing a problem passenger. He didn't realize he was grounding his own flight, his own reputation, and his entire future. Because what he thought was a simple boarding pass was about to be revealed as something else entirely, and the karma would be devastating. The sterile, recycled air of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, ATL, was thick with the scent of Cinnabon and jet fuel. It was 8:05 p.m., and the terminal was a frantic river of humanity. Dr. Evelyn Reed navigated the current with the practiced ease of a career traveler, her roller bag clicking a steady rhythm on the tile. She was exhausted. Not just long day tired, but a bone-deep weariness that came from 72 straight hours of high-stakes work. She was a ghost, blending into the crowd in her simple, tailored black trousers, a silk blouse, and a worn but expensive linen blazer. The only thing that hinted at her profession was the heavy, government-issue laptop bag slung over her shoulder and the piercing intelligence in her eyes. Eyes that had just spent 3 days scrutinizing aircraft maintenance logs, ramp procedures, and crew compliance for a major carrier. She was the person airlines prayed never showed up unannounced. Her destination was Global Apex Airlines, Flight 22, non-stop from Atlanta to London Heathrow. It was her flight home. She was based in the London office of the Federal Aviation Administration. At gate E14, the organized chaos of boarding a Boeing 777 was underway. She joined the priority line for first class, her ticket on her phone. The gate agent, a flustered man named Kyle, scanned her pass. "Thank you, Dr. Reed. Enjoy your flight. Seat 2A. Evelyn nodded, walking down the jet bridge, the anticipation of 10 hours of mandated rest almost making her dizzy. She stepped onto the aircraft and was greeted by the lead flight attendant. The woman's name tag read Brenda. Her smile was a painted-on rictus that didn't reach her cold, assessing eyes. "Welcome," Brenda said, her voice a reedy soprano. She glanced at Evelyn, then at the first-class cabin, then back at Evelyn. The implication was subtle, but clear. "You?" "2A," Evelyn said simply, holding up her pass. "Of course," Brenda replied, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Let me see that again, dear." Evelyn held out her phone. Brenda squinted at it for an unnecessarily long time before handing it back. "Right this way. Can I help you with that bag? It looks heavy." "I can manage," Evelyn said, already moving past her. She knew that look. She had seen it her entire life. It was the look of someone recalculating their entire worldview because a square peg, a black woman, was appearing in a round, first-class-shaped hole. She found 2A, a luxurious pod by the window, and skillfully stowed her roller bag in the overhead bin. She slid into the seat, the leather sighing around her. She pulled out her laptop, not the government one, which was locked in her carry-on, but her personal tablet. She had reports to finalize. She was just another passenger, another cog in the massive machine of international travel. The cabin slowly filled. Businessmen in wrinkled suits, a young couple on their honeymoon, an older woman with a yapping terrier in a carrier. Evelyn was already lost in her work, her fingers flying across the screen as she documented a series of violations she'd found on the tarmac. She was so focused that she didn't notice the man in the crisp white uniform emerge from the cockpit. Captain Mark Jensen was a man who believed the world was divided into two groups: people who belonged and people who didn't. He was a 30-year veteran, a pilot's pilot, who saw his aircraft not as a public conveyance, but as his private kingdom in the sky. And he was the king. He was doing his final pre-flight walkthrough of the cabin, a ritual he enjoyed. It was about asserting dominance, making the passengers feel his presence. He nodded at the businessman in 1D, charmed the couple in 3F. And then he saw Evelyn. She wasn't looking at him, she was typing. Her blazer was draped over the back of her seat. Her focus was intense. Jensen stopped. He looked at her. He looked at the empty seat beside her. He looked at the other passengers. He saw a black woman in what was, in his mind, his exclusive domain. And his mind, clouded by years of unchallenged bias, made a fatal calculation. She doesn't belong. He strode over to Brenda, who was preparing pre-departure drinks. He motioned with his head. "Who is that in 2A? Brenda's lip curled in a tiny conspiratorial sneer. "That's what I was wondering, Captain. She claims it's her seat. I checked her pass. It said 2A. But, Jensen repeated, nodding. He'd seen this before. Stolen frequent flyer miles, fraudulent upgrades, employees from other airlines trying to jump seat in a premium cabin they hadn't paid for. "I'll handle this," Jensen said, his voice low and confident. He puffed out his chest and walked down the aisle, stopping right next to Evelyn's seat. She didn't look up. "Mom," he said. Evelyn continued typing. "Mom," he said again, louder, his voice edged with impatience. Evelyn finally looked up, pulling her focus from the intricate details of a hydraulic line inspection. "Yes? Can I help you, Captain?" "I'm Captain Jensen. I'm going to need to see your boarding pass," he said. It wasn't a request. Evelyn blinked. "I've already shown it, at the gate, and to the flight attendant." "And now you'll show it to me," he said, his voice flat. "There seems to be a discrepancy with our manifest." A lie? A blatant, lazy lie. Sighing, Evelyn picked up her phone, unlocked it, and showed him the screen. "Dr. Evelyn Reed, seat 2A, flight 22 to London." Jensen barely glanced at it. "That's what it says. But I'm afraid this seat is reserved. There must be a mistake." Now, Evelyn's exhaustion was pierced by a sharp sting of adrenaline. "A mistake? Captain, I am a ticketed passenger. This is my assigned seat." "This is a premium cabin, ma'am," he said, his voice dropping into a patronizing drawl. "Perhaps you were supposed to be in 22A, not 2A." The implication was disgusting, that she was either too stupid to read her ticket or too poor to be where she was. The passengers around them were starting to listen, their conversations dying. "Captain," Evelyn said, her voice becoming dangerously quiet, "are you implying I can't read, or that I can't afford this ticket? Because I assure you, my ticket is valid." Jensen's face hardened. He was not used to being challenged. "What I'm implying, ma'am, is that you are not in the correct seat. Now, I'm going to ask you politely one more time. Please gather your belongings and come with me to the galley so we can sort this out." "There is nothing to sort out," Evelyn said, her patience shattering. "I am in my ticketed seat. I will not be moving." A man in seat 3B, a silver-haired gentleman in a tailored suit, leaned over. "Captain, for heaven's sake, the lady showed you her pass. What's the problem?" Jensen's head whipped around. "Sir, this is a matter of aircraft safety and security. Please stay out of it." He turned back to Evelyn, his face now a mask of cold fury. "Ma'am, you are now failing to comply with a flight crew's instructions. That is a federal offense." Evelyn almost laughed. He was lecturing her on federal offenses. "The only person failing their duties here, Captain, is you. You are harassing a paying passenger based on what exactly? A hunch? That was it. He had been publicly questioned and embarrassed. His authority was on the line. "Brenda!" he snapped. Brenda was at his side instantly. "Yes, Captain? This passenger is creating a disturbance. She is non-compliant, and I suspect her documentation is fraudulent. She is a security risk." Brenda nodded eagerly. "I thought so, Captain. She was very evasive when she boarded." "No, I wasn't," Evelyn stated, her voice rising, cutting through the cabin. "I showed you my pass. You're lying." "That's it," Jensen said, his decision made. He pointed a finger directly at Evelyn's face. The entire plane was silent, watching. "You are off this aircraft. Now." Evelyn stood up, her 5'9" frame matching his height. "I am not going anywhere." "You don't have a choice," Jensen sneered. He turned to Brenda. "Call the gate. Tell them to send airport security. We have a non-compliant passenger. I want her removed." The words "call security" echoed in the pressurized silence of the cabin. It was the nuclear option, a phrase that turned a simple disagreement into a federal incident. The man in 3B, who introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, was aghast. "This is outrageous. She's done nothing. I'm a witness to this." "Sir, I've warned you," Jensen snapped. "You're next if you interfere." Brenda, meanwhile, had already scurried to the service phone. "Gate E14. This is Lead FA Brenda on Global 22. The captain needs security at the jet bridge immediately. We have a disruptive passenger in 2A, refusing to deplane. Yes." A woman. Evelyn Reed stood in the aisle, her heart hammering a furious rhythm against her ribs. This wasn't just an insult. It was a professional and public humiliation. Every eye was on her. Phones were emerging. People weren't just watching, they were recording. The whispered comments started, a hiss of rumor and judgment. What did she do? Must have stolen the ticket. Why do they always make a scene? Evelyn's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She forced them to relax. She had been trained for high-pressure situations, cockpits filling with smoke, landing gear failing to deploy, pilots panicking at 30,000 feet. She had faced down furious airline executives and belligerent union reps. She would not lose her cool now. Not to this arrogant, prejudiced fool in a uniform. "Captain Jensen," she said, her voice steel, "I want you to think very, very carefully about your next move. I am advising you, as a professional, to stand down. You are making a catastrophic error." "The only error," Jensen retorted, "was letting you on this plane in the first place. My order stands. You are a threat to the safety and order of this flight. Security will handle you." He crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. He had won. He was the king, and he was ejecting the intruder. He stepped back, moving toward the cockpit, as if to distance himself from the coming confrontation, leaving Brenda to stand guard. "Mum," Brenda said, her voice syrupy with false concern, "if you'll just come with me, we can avoid making this any worse than it already is." "Oh, it's going to get worse," Evelyn promised, her eyes locked on the L1 door. "But not for me." The junior flight attendant, a young man named Tom Allen, looked pale and horrified. He was stocking drink carts in the galley and kept looking at Evelyn with an expression of profound apology. But he said nothing. He was new. He was terrified of the captain and of Brenda. The minutes stretched. The air in the cabin grew thick and toxic. The delay was announced over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We are handling a security matter at the gate. We will update you shortly." This, Evelyn knew, was a deliberate tactic. By labeling her a security matter, Jensen was retroactively justifying his decision, painting her as a potential terrorist, not a passenger in a seating dispute. It was a vile, career-ending accusation. Finally, the L1 door, which had been closed, was unlocked from the outside. A blast of humid Atlanta air entered the cabin, followed by 2 uniformed officers from the Atlanta Police Department. One was older, stocky, with a salt and pepper mustache and a name tag that read Riley. The other was younger, fitter, and more alert, his tag reading Sanchez. "What's the problem here?" Riley said, his voice a gravelly monotone. Captain Jensen reappeared, his face a mask of solemn, false authority. "Officers, thank you for coming. I am Captain Jensen, pilot in command. I have a passenger here." He pointed directly at Evelyn, who is non-compliant. She is refusing to show valid documentation for her seat. She has become disruptive, and she is refusing a direct order to deplane. For the safety of my flight, I am exercising my right as captain to have her removed from this aircraft. It was a perfectly recited speech, Evelyn noted. All the right buzzwords. Non-compliant. Disruptive. Safety. He was building his case. Officer Riley sighed. It was clear he'd done this 100 times. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Evelyn. "You heard the captain. He has final say on this plane. We need you to gather your belongings and come with us. Nice and easy." "Officer," Evelyn said, speaking with deliberate calm, "I am Dr. Evelyn Reed. I am a fully ticketed passenger in my assigned seat, 2A. My documentation is on my phone, which the captain refused to look at. I have not been disruptive. I have been harassed." Mr. Harrison, the lawyer in 3B, spoke up again. "She's telling the truth, officers. I saw the whole thing. The captain is the one who's being disruptive. He targeted her." Riley shot him an annoyed look. "Sir, I need you to stay out of this. This is an aircraft, not a courtroom. The PIC's word is law." "That is not entirely accurate, officer," Evelyn stated. "The pilot in command has authority, unless that authority is being used to commit a crime. In this case, he is committing an act of blatant discrimination." "I don't care about that," Riley grunted, stepping into the aisle. "All I care about is, he wants you off. You're delaying this whole flight. Now, are you going to walk, or do we have to carry you? I highly recommend you walk." Officer Sanchez, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Ma'am, please, don't make this a bigger deal. We can sort it out in the terminal." Evelyn looked at the 2 officers. They were the wall. They were the blunt instrument of Jensen's prejudice. She looked at Jensen, who was watching with a look of smug triumph. She looked at Brenda, who was smiling. She looked at the dozens of phones filming her. This was it. The moment of decision. "Officers," Evelyn said, her voice resonating with a sudden, chilling authority that made both cops pause. "Before you lay a hand on me, I need to inform you of something. If you forcibly remove me from this aircraft while I am on duty, you will not just be creating an incident. You will be actively interfering with the duties of a federal officer. And that," she said, locking eyes with Riley, "is a felony." The cabin, already quiet, seemed to enter a vacuum. The only sound was the faint whine of the auxiliary power unit. Officer Riley froze, his hand halfway to his belt. The word felony was a trigger. The phrase federal officer was a bomb. Captain Jensen let out a short, barking laugh. "A federal officer? You've got to be kidding me. Is that your new story? A federal officer of what? The fashion police?" "Nice try." Brenda giggled, a sound like glass breaking. "Ma'am," Officer Sanchez said, his voice suddenly wary. He was the younger one, the one who had seen more procedural training videos. "That's a very serious claim to make. If you're lying, you're in a much deeper hole." I'm aware, Evelyn said. She shifted her gaze from the cops to the pilot. Captain Jensen, this is your final chance. Retract your order. Apologize to me and to your passengers for this disruption and return to your cockpit. We can all pretend this was a simple, embarrassing misunderstanding. Jensen's face flushed crimson. The audacity. A misunderstanding. I'll show you a misunderstanding. Officers, this woman is now impersonating a federal officer on top of everything else. I want her in cuffs. Get her off my plane. Riley, spurred by the captain's certainty, nodded. All right, lady. You asked for it. You're under. Stop, Evelyn commanded. She didn't shout. Her voice was pure, concentrated ice. It cut through Jensen's rant and stopped Riley in his tracks. Slowly, deliberately, Evelyn Reed reached not for her phone, not for her passport, but for the heavy, government-issue laptop bag at her feet. She unzipped the main compartment, past her tablet and a binder of reports. She reached deep inside and pulled out a small, black leather wallet. It didn't look like much, but to anyone in the aviation or law enforcement world, it was more powerful than a weapon. She didn't show it to Jensen. He didn't deserve the courtesy. She turned to Officer Sanchez. Officer, come here, read this. Read it very, very slowly. Sanchez, looking nervous, stepped forward. Evelyn flipped open the wallet. On one side was a gleaming, gold and blue metallic badge, emblazoned with an eagle and a shield. On the other, laminated and bearing her photograph, was a set of credentials. Sanchez leaned in. His eyes scanned the top line, and his face went completely, devastatingly white. It was as if he'd been punched in the gut. He physically recoiled, his hand instinctively going to his own badge, a subconscious gesture of respect. "Riley," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Riley. Holy." "What?" Riley grunted, annoyed. "What is it?" Sanchez just pointed. Just look." Riley elbowed past him, squinting. He read the top line, then the second. His jaw went slack. The cynical, tired cop veneer evaporated, replaced by a sudden, dawning horror. "Oh no," Riley muttered, taking a step back. Captain Jensen, who had been watching this all with amusement, now felt the first prickle of doubt. What? What is it? A fake ID from a cereal box." Officer Riley turned. His entire demeanor had changed. He was no longer a bored airport cop. He was a man standing in front of a person who could end his career with a single phone call. "Captain Jensen," Riley said, his voice suddenly formal and shaky. What exactly was the specific safety threat this passenger was posing? You said she was disruptive. What was she doing? "She was," Jensen stammered, wrong-footed by the officer's sudden change. "She was refusing my order. She wouldn't move. The ticket it's fraudulent." "Sir," Sanchez interrupted, his voice respectful, "I can personally assure you, her credentials are not fraudulent. Do you have any other reason?" It was at that moment that Evelyn Reed stood to her full height. The power in the cabin had shifted, flowing from the man in the white uniform to the woman in the black blazer. She took the credentials from Sanchez and held them up for Captain Jensen to see. "Captain," she said, her voice clear and carrying to the last row of the economy cabin, "my name is Dr. Evelyn Reed, and this," she flashed the badge and ID, "is my board pass." She pointed to the bold, unmistakable letters at the top. United States of America, Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration, and then to the title beneath her name. Aviation Safety Inspector, credential number 774 Alpha. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the plane. Brenda, the flight attendant's hands flew to her mouth, her face the color of spoiled milk. Evelyn wasn't done. "I am an FAA inspector, Captain. My job is to ensure the safety of the national airspace system. My job, she said, taking a step toward him, is to inspect aircraft, procedures, and flight crews for compliance. I just finished a 72-hour audit on this airline's ramp operations. This flight is my scheduled transport back to my post in London. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. But as of 3 minutes ago, when you falsely accused me of being a security threat and called law enforcement to remove me from this plane, this flight is no longer my transport. She looked him dead in the eye, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. This flight, she said, is now an active federal investigation. The silence that followed Dr. Reed's announcement was absolute. It was the pressurized quiet of a deep-sea trench, heavy and complete. The passengers who had been filming on their phones now held them as still as statues, capturing what they all instinctively knew was a moment of profound, career-ending justice. Captain Mark Jensen's face, which had been flushed with arrogant fury, was now a pale, mottled grey. The blood had drained from it, leaving behind a sheen of cold sweat. He stared at the gold badge, his mind refusing to process the information. That's not possible," he stammered, a pathetic echo of his earlier bravado. It's a fake. You bought that online." Officer Riley, now desperate to get on the right side of this disaster, stepped between Jensen and Evelyn. "Sir, I would shut your mouth right now. That is a 100% legitimate Department of Transportation credential. We are trained to recognize them." "You can run my credentials, Captain," Evelyn said, her voice devoid of any emotion but a chilling professionalism. "Badge 774 Alpha. Or you can call your own airline's Chief of Operations. I guarantee you he has my name on a list. He probably has a very panicked email from his head of maintenance in Atlanta that I just left his facility 5 hours ago." She turned to the two officers. "Officers Riley and Sanchez, this is now an active FAA matter. I need you to remain here. You are witnesses. Your body cams, if they are active, are now evidence." "Yes, ma'am," Sanchez said instantly. Riley just nodded, his face grim. Evelyn then looked past the officers, her eyes scanning the cabin. "The gentleman in 3B, Mr. Harrison, I believe. Sir, you are also a witness. I will need a statement from you." Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, was smiling for the first time. "It would be my absolute pleasure, Dr. Reed. I have a full recording of the captain's threats." Evelyn nodded. "Thank you." Her gaze then fell on the junior flight attendant, Tom Allen, who was still trying to make himself invisible in the galley. "Son," Evelyn called out. "What's your name?" Tom, ma'am." "Tom Allen," he stuttered. "Tom, I have been observing you for the last 10 minutes. You have remained professional. You have not participated in this incident. Please resume your pre-flight safety duties. We are going to be delayed, and I'll need you to coordinate with the gate for passenger comfort." "Yes, ma'am," Tom said, his relief palpable. He was being given a lifeboat. Finally, Evelyn's gaze landed on the two people who had started this. First, Brenda. Brenda Lloyd was visibly shaking. Her painted-on smile was gone, her face a crumpled mask of terror. "Brenda," Evelyn said. He told me to," Brenda blurted out, her voice a pathetic squeak. "The captain. He's the pilot in command. I was just following his orders. I didn't mean anything." "You confirmed his lie, Miss Lloyd," Evelyn said, her voice cutting. "You stated I was evasive. You helped escalate this situation. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. Go to the jump seat, sit down, and do not speak to anyone. Do not touch any aircraft controls. Do you understand me?" Yes." Yes, ma'am, Brenda whimpered. She practically crawled to the nearest jump seat, her career flashing before her eyes. And then, there was only one left. Evelyn Reed took a slow, deliberate step toward Captain Mark Jensen. He was trapped. The cockpit was behind him, the passengers were in front of him, and this woman, this FAA inspector he had tried to humiliate, was blocking his path. "Captain Jensen," Evelyn said, her voice low so only he and the officers could hear, but the entire cabin could feel the intensity. "You have, in the last 15 minutes, demonstrated a level of judgment so catastrophically poor that I cannot, in good conscience, allow you to be in command of this 300-ton aircraft. You have shown clear, demonstrable bias. You have created a hostile environment. You have lied to law enforcement. And you have falsely invoked a security threat, which is a serious federal matter." "Now, wait just a minute," Jensen started, trying to grasp at the last straws of his authority. "I am the PIC. You can't. You are interfering with my flight crew." Evelyn held up her hand. "Stop. You have 2 options, Captain, and I am giving you these as a courtesy." She pointed to the L1 door. "Option 1. You will voluntarily remove yourself from this flight deck. You will hand your duties over to your first officer. You will walk off this plane with these officers and meet me and your airline's chief pilot in the terminal. We will call it a medical removal. For now, you will be grounded, pending a full investigation. But you will do it quietly." She took another step closer. "Option 2. You refuse. And right here, in front of your crew and all these passengers, I will officially, under the authority vested in me by United States Code, Title 49, relieve you of command for erratic and dangerous behavior. I will have these officers remove you in handcuffs. Your pilot's license will be emergency revoked before that door closes. And I assure you, you will never, ever fly a commercial aircraft again." She held his gaze. "The choice is yours. You have 10 seconds. Jensen looked at her. He saw no bluff. He saw no anger. He saw only the cold, hard machinery of the federal government. He looked at Officer Riley, who was just daring him to choose option 2. He looked at the passengers, their phones all pointed at him. He was broken. The king had been deposed. He choked, his voice thick. "I will step down, voluntarily." "A wise decision," Evelyn said. She turned to Riley. "Officers, please escort Mr. Jensen to the terminal. He is not to be left alone until a global Apex executive arrives. He is distraught." Jensen, a man who had walked onto this plane like a god, did not even bother to grab his hat. His shoulders slumped. He looked, for the first time, like what he was, a small, defeated old man. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the jet bridge, Officer Riley and Sanchez flanking him. As he crossed the threshold of the plane, a few passengers started to clap. It began with Mr. Harrison, then spread. It was not a celebratory sound. It was a hard, sharp, biting applause of pure, unadulterated karma. The king was gone. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the woman he tried to eject, was now in command. She pulled out her official government cell phone, the one she'd been dreading using, and hit a number on speed dial. "This is Inspector Reed," she said into the phone. "I need to speak to the FAA Regional Administrator. Now. And then, I need you to get me the CEO of Global Apex Airlines. We have a problem." The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. As Jensen was led away, a ripple of secondary shock went through the gate agents and the ground crew. The captain of a 777 being escorted off his own flight, not on a stretcher, but by police. It was unheard of. On the plane, Dr. Evelyn Reed was a whirlwind of controlled, professional fury. She made her call to the FAA regional office in Atlanta, and the conversation was brief and brutal. "Jim, it's Reed. I'm on Global 22, ATL LHR. I've had to ground the pick. Yes, ground, Captain Mark Jensen. Full incident report is forthcoming, but the short version is bias-motivated harassment, falsifying a security threat, and attempting to have me unlawfully removed." Yes, me. There was a pause. Evelyn listened, her face grim. "Correct. I need a new flight crew. Pick and lead FA are both grounded, effective immediately. No, the first officer is clean, but he's too junior to take the command. I need a full, seasoned crew, and I need them here an hour ago. And get me the tower. This plane isn't moving an inch until I've personally inspected the new crew's credentials." She hung up and immediately dialed another number. "This is Dr. Evelyn Reed with the FAA. Get me Daniel Price. I don't care if he's at dinner. Tell him an FAA inspector just grounded one of his international flights at Hartsfield and is about to hold a press conference if he doesn't pick up." Daniel Price, the CEO of Global Apex Airlines, picked up in less than 30 seconds. While Evelyn was making calls from the galley, the horrified junior FA, Tom Allen, made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently sorting out a new flight crew. We apologize for the extended delay. We will be coming through the cabin with complimentary beverages and, snacks." Mr. Harrison, the lawyer from 3B, unbuckled and walked up to the galley. "Dr. Reed, my name is Arthur Harrison. I'm a partner at a DC firm. First, that was the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. Second, I have my card. My firm specializes in transportation law. I and several other passengers here," he gestured to the people around him, "are prepared to give full, sworn statements to whomever you need. What that man did was not just unprofessional, it was illegal." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," Evelyn said, taking his card. "I will be passing your name to my superiors. For now, please return to your seat. This is still an active investigation scene." Meanwhile, in the terminal, the humiliation of Captain Mark Jensen was just beginning. He was taken not to the main police precinct, but to a sterile, windowless administrative office run by airport operations. Officer Riley and Sanchez sat with him, the silence suffocating. Jensen tried to bluster. "This is ridiculous. She has no right. My union will—" "Your union rep is on his way, sir," Riley said, his voice dead. "But I'd start thinking about my statement. My body cam and my partners were active from the moment we entered the jet bridge. And what we have is you, Captain, ordering us to remove a passenger, and her identifying herself as a federal agent, and you doubling down." Brenda was brought to the same room a few minutes later, crying hysterically. "It was him. It was all him. I just work here. He's the captain. I'm supposed to listen to him." "You're also supposed to use your judgment, Miss Lloyd," Sanchez said, his patience gone. "You lied. You said she was evasive. We heard the audio. She wasn't evasive. She was being harassed." An hour later, 2 Global Apex executives arrived, their faces ashen. One was the chief pilot for the Atlanta hub, a man named Stephen. The other was an in-house lawyer. "Mark, what the hell did you do?" Stephen asked, his voice a whisper. "She wouldn't show me her pass. She looked suspicious," Jensen pleaded. "Suspicious?" the lawyer shot back. "How? How was she suspicious? Was it her clothes, her bag, or, Mark, and be honest, was it the fact that she was a black woman sitting in 2A? Jensen's silence was his confession. Stephen, the chief pilot, closed his eyes. The passenger videos are already on Twitter. Global Apex captain forcibly removes passenger. Only, The passenger didn't get removed. You did. The FAA administrator himself just called our CEO. The airline is grounding your entire license, Mark, effective immediately. You are not to set foot in a cockpit. Hand over your company ID and your aircraft keys. Jensen's hands trembled as he unclipped his ID. This was it. 30 years. Gone. In 15 minutes. Brenda's fate was just as swift. Brenda, the lawyer said, not even looking at her. You're suspended without pay, pending termination. We've seen 3 videos where you clearly lied and backed his play. Get out. Back on the plane, 3 hours later, a new crew arrived. A new captain, a new first officer, and a new lead flight attendant. The captain, a woman named Maria Flores, walked directly up to Evelyn. Dr. Reed, I'm Captain Flores. My crew and I are here to take over. I've been briefed. I'm just so profoundly sorry for what you experienced. It's disgusting. Evelyn looked at her crew, and nodded. Captain Flores, thank you for coming in. Please show me your crew's credentials, and then let's get these people to London. Evelyn, no longer a passenger, did not take her seat. She spent the entire 10-hour flight in the cockpit jump seat, observing, not as punishment for the new crew, but as a statement. The FAA was watching. When the plane finally landed at London Heathrow, 12 hours late, Evelyn Reed was the last one to deplane. As the exhausted passengers filed off, many of them, from first class and from economy, stopped to thank her. What you did was incredible. Thank you for standing up to him. I've never seen anything like it. Arthur Harrison was the last to leave. Dr. Reed, he said, this isn't over. He didn't just harass you. He defamed you. He called you a security threat. That's slander, and Global Apex is liable. I'll be in touch. Evelyn merely nodded. Have a safe day, Mr. Harrison. She was finally home. But her work was just beginning. The karma for Mark Jensen was not just a suspension. It was a full, professional, and financial annihilation. The hard karma for Captain Mark Jensen was not a single, swift execution. It was a slow, meticulous dissection, performed with the cold, bureaucratic precision of the federal government. The day after the incident, Dr. Evelyn Reed filed her official report. It was 42 pages long. It included her own detailed testimony, the sworn, notarized statements from Arthur Harrison and 6 other passengers, transcripts from the body cam footage provided by Officers Riley and Sanchez, and a damning analysis of the junior FA, Tom Allen, who confirmed that Jensen and Brenda had been conspiring about Evelyn before the confrontation even began. The report landed on the desks of the FAA's legal counsel, the Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights, and the Board of Directors of Global Apex Airlines. Mark Jensen's karma. Jensen, as expected, was fired. But Global Apex, in a desperate attempt to show the FAA they were handling it, fired him for cause, citing gross misconduct, endangerment of passengers, and violations of company anti-harassment policy. This for cause termination meant he was ineligible for his severance package. His 30-year pension was frozen, pending legal battles he could no longer afford. But that was just his job. The FAA was handling his career. They opened a formal investigation. Jensen was summoned to a hearing at the FAA's regional headquarters. He showed up with his union representative, still clinging to the defense that he had sole discretion as PIC. The FAA panel, which included Dr. Evelyn Reed, sitting silently in the back of the room, dismantled him. Captain Jensen, the lead investigator asked, you stated the passenger was suspicious. Can you please define, with specificity, what you found suspicious? She was dressed, casually. She wouldn't make eye contact. She was intense. Intense, the investigator repeated. Dr. Reed had just completed a 72-hour continuous safety audit at your own airline's facility. Would exhausted and focused not be more accurate terms? I didn't know that at the time. Exactly, the investigator shot back. You knew nothing. You knew only what you saw, and what you saw was a black woman in a seat you felt she didn't belong in. You then proceeded to lie to her, lie about her, to your crew, and lie to law enforcement, culminating in the false invocation of a security threat. Do you have any idea how serious that is? His union rep tried to argue, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The videos, the witnesses, the testimony of the very police officers he had called. The FAA's ruling was brutal. Mark Jensen's airline transport pilot, ATP license, was suspended indefinitely. Not just for Global Apex. For everyone. He couldn't fly a 777. He couldn't fly a tiny Cessna for a local sightseeing company. He was grounded permanently. 6 months later, the Department of Justice, citing the DOT's civil rights investigation, filed federal charges against him for interference with a federal officer in the performance of their duties. Mark Jensen, the king of the skies, was forced to plead guilty to a lesser charge just to avoid prison time. He received 5 years of probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and $100,000 a fine. We see him 1 year later. He's not selling cars. He's working as a dispatcher for a small, regional trucking company in rural Georgia, making $17 an hour. His house was repossessed. His wife, a pilot for Delta, had left him, humiliated by the public scandal. He was a broken, bitter man, ruined by a 15-minute decision born of pure prejudice. Brenda Lloyd's karma. Brenda, the lead flight attendant, was also fired. She tried to sue for wrongful termination, claiming she was just following orders. Global Apex's lawyers, in response, released her file. It turned out she had 14 previous passenger complaints filed against her, 10 of which were from minority passengers, citing rude or dismissive behavior. The airline had ignored them. Now, she was a liability. Her FAA flight attendant certification was suspended for 18 months for failing to perform safety-related duties and for providing false information during a security incident. When she was finally eligible to fly again, no major airline would touch her. Her name was toxic. She ended up working for a bottom-rung charter airline that flew casino junkets from Biloxi to Atlantic City. Her premium cabin was now 150 drunk gamblers, and her pre-departure beverage service was plastic cups of warm ginger ale. The karma for Mark Jensen and Brenda Lloyd was personal and devastating, a swift and just end to their careers. But the true, hard karma, the kind that echoes and reshapes an entire industry, was reserved for the system that created them, Global Apex Airlines. The videos, shot from a dozen angles, had hit the internet before Flight 22 was even halfway across the Atlantic. The hashtags, Raw Global Apex Racism, Kida King Captain Grounded, and Justice for Dr. Reed were trending worldwide. By the time the new crew landed at Heathrow, Global Apex's stock had already taken a 14-point nosedive in pre-market trading, wiping out over $700 million in shareholder value. The CEO, Daniel Price, was in a crisis meeting before Evelyn had even cleared customs. "What's the play?" a frantic board member demanded. "The play?" Price snapped, holding his phone. "I just got off a call with the administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration." He wasn't asking. He was telling. Dr. Reed's report is being fast-tracked to the Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights. We are facing a full federal review. Their initial press release, a bland corporate statement about an incident on Flight 22 and valuing all our customers, was ratioed into oblivion, mocked for its weakness. Then came the second blow. Mr. Arthur Harrison, the lawyer from 3B, held a press conference. He wasn't just filing a small claims suit for a delay. He was announcing a $250 million class action lawsuit against Global Apex Airlines on behalf of all 244 passengers. The charges weren't just inconvenience, they were aiding and abetting racial discrimination, false imprisonment, and defamation and endangerment by allowing a captain to falsely label a passenger as a security threat. Global Apex was bleeding from every artery. Their reputation was in tatters, their stock was in freefall, and the federal government was preparing for war. They settled the class action suit in record time. The amount was sealed, but insiders whispered it was well over $100 million, a catastrophic loss. But that was just the money. The FAA's penalty was about power. Dr. Evelyn Reed's 42-page report was a masterpiece of bureaucratic destruction. It didn't just detail the incident, it cross-referenced Jensen's and Brenda's employee files, revealing a clear pattern of ignored complaints. It proved with chilling clarity that this was not an isolated incident, but the inevitable eruption of a toxic, unchecked culture. The FAA didn't just fine them. The $15.5 million fine was a parking ticket. The real punishment was the consent decree. Global Apex Airlines was placed under a 2-year federal monitorship, the most severe penalty the FAA can impose short of revoking an airline's operating certificate. They were no longer trusted to fly their own planes without a babysitter. An FAA monitor would have an office in their corporate headquarters with an all-access badge, the power to sit in on any meeting, audit any flight, and veto any hiring or training policy that didn't meet the new standard. And in a move of pure, poetic justice, the FAA administrator appointed the monitor, Dr. Evelyn Reed. She was promoted to Acting Director of Compliance and Civil Rights, a position created specifically for this task. Her first day, she walked into the Global Apex boardroom. The same executives who had offered groveling apologies now sat in stunned silence as she took the seat at the head of the table. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said, her voice echoing in the plush room. "Here is my first directive. You will fund, to the tune of $20 million, the creation of the Jensen-Reed Compliance Module. It will be mandatory for every single pilot, flight attendant, and gate agent in this company, from your junior-most new hire to your CEO." For the next year, Evelyn was a force of nature. She didn't just oversee training, she built it from the ground up, using the body cam footage and passenger videos as the core curriculum. The Jensen-Reed module became a legend in the industry. It wasn't a simple webinar. Pilots were put into a full-motion flight simulator. Halfway through a flight, a scenario would begin. An actor playing a passenger would present a discrepancy. The pilot's every word, their tone, their heart rate, and their de-escalation attempts were monitored and graded. If they showed bias, if they escalated, if they once threatened to call security without just cause, they failed. A failure meant they were grounded until they could pass. Old guard captains, friends of Mark Jensen, called it a witch hunt. One senior pilot, a 35-year veteran, refused, saying, "I will not be lectured by some diversity hire." Evelyn didn't argue. She simply pulled his file, pointed to 2 complaints he'd had in the last year, and signed the paper that suspended his flight status. "Your recertification is revoked, Captain. Enjoy the bench." The rebellion ended that day. The module was so effective, so ruthless at identifying problem employees, that Global Apex's passenger complaints dropped by 90% in 6 months. The program was so successful that Delta, United, and American all petitioned the FAA to license the training. Dr. Reed's work became the new gold standard for the entire aviation industry. 2 years later, We are at Chicago O'Hare. Dr. Evelyn Reed, now the permanent Deputy Administrator for Aviation Safety and Civil Rights, is walking to her gate. She is no longer a ghost. People recognize her. A woman stops her. Dr. Reed, I saw your speech. Thank you. You changed how I fly. Evelyn smiles and nods, continuing to gate K-12. She's flying to London for an international safety conference. She boards the flight, a Global Apex 777. As she steps onto the plane, the captain is standing at the cockpit door. He is a tall, sharp-looking black man with silver at his temples. He sees her, and his face breaks into a smile of pure, unadulterated respect. Dr. Reed, he says, stepping forward and offering his hand. Captain Michael Adebayo, it is a profound honor to have you on board. Captain, Evelyn says, shaking his hand. I was in your first test group for the module, he says, his voice full of gratitude. I thought I was a good pilot. Your training made me a better man. You taught me to see what I was missing. Thank you. He glances at her boarding pass. 2A, the throne. Evelyn laughs. Just getting me to London, Captain. It's our privilege, he says. Then he does something unexpected. He leans toward his flight attendant. Hold boarding for a moment. He steps into the cabin aisle and taps the PA button. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Adebayo from the flight deck. Just a quick announcement before we continue boarding. We have a true VIP on our flight tonight. A woman whose work has made every single person on this aircraft and in the sky fundamentally safer. You may not know her name, but she is the reason our crews are trained to the highest standards of safety and respect in the world. Please join me in welcoming a hero of American aviation, FAA Deputy Administrator, Dr. Evelyn Reed. The entire cabin, still boarding, people stowing bags, stops, and they applaud. It's not the bitter, angry applause of karma that had escorted Mark Jensen off a plane. It's a warm, genuine wave of gratitude. Evelyn, for the first time, looks slightly embarrassed, but she nods graciously. Captain Adebayo smiles at her. Have a wonderful flight, Doctor. We've got you. Evelyn Reed walks to her seat. 2A. She stows her heavy government bag in the overhead bin. She sits down, the leather sighing around her. A flight attendant, one who has passed her module, leans in. Dr. Reed, can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Water? Champagne? Water would be lovely, thank you, Evelyn says. She looks out the window. The ground crew is working. The lights of O'Hare are twinkling. 2 years ago, she had been in this exact seat, filled with exhaustion, rage, and the lonely burden of the fight to come. Now, she is just as tired. But as the plane pushes back from the gate, she closes her eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, she simply rests. The king was gone. The system had been remade, and the new standard was, finally, in command. What you just heard is a story of what happens when prejudice and power collide at 30,000 feet. It's a reminder that a person's authority isn't based on the uniform they wear or the assumptions we make, but on their character and their credentials. Captain Jensen thought he was the king of that plane, but he forgot that Dr. Evelyn Reed was the one who certified the kingdom. The karma wasn't just that he lost his job, it's that his downfall became the very training material used to prevent people like him from ever rising that high again. What did you think of the hard karma Mark Jensen and Brenda received? Was it enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of hard karma and seeing justice served, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. We have new stories coming every week, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for watching.